Moving right into continuing with adolescence, but then we're moving to emotional identity and social development, which is really important for us as counselors. First, we're going to start with emotional development. Um, Emotional fluctuations are really, really common during this time. There's hormone changes, puberty. There's a lot going on emotionally in adolescence. Um, Also, because they're starting to understand the perception of others and that higher order thinking is starting, they're able to maybe perceive how others may be talking about them or looking at them or more aware of others' look and how does that compare to me and that body image stuff going on. And um, now, toward the end of adolescence, mid to end, they do start to stabilize a bit. We as counselors need to be very knowledgeable about anxiety, depression, and anger to help our adolescent clients navigate the pressures of adolescence. The imaginary audience that we talked about in the last lecture can really contribute to the perception of what others are thinking and create anxiety for our clients when they're in this stage of life. Um, Teenagers worry about how they look, what people think about them, if they don't do well. So, like if they're on a sport and they miss the shot, everyone gets 100, they don't, or even everyone fails and they don't. So, I always want to talk about the other side of that. And sometimes success can be looked at as negative too. Sometimes, like, oh, anything that alienates them is really problematic, even if it's positive. So there's so many changes in this stage of life. It's so important to understand the high prevalence of these issues of anxiety and depression. Um, they're very vulnerable and very worried about peer acceptance. So let's talk about adolescent depression. So adolescent depression is the most common psychological disturbance. So you need to know that, all right? It is the most common issue, the most common diagnosis in adolescence. So if you're seeing an adolescent, you're going to want to screen for this. And you're going to need to use a measure, not just your own perception, but you also want to do a checklist of symptoms from DSM-5, right? And you already took that class, you understand what these symptoms are. But there are multiple symptoms like pessimism, hopelessness, loss of interest in activities, social withdrawal, difficulty making decisions, being apathetic, changes in eating and sleeping, being really tired, just lethargic, low self-esteem. But they may appear irritable and angry or acting out, which often results in punishment, which exacerbates the issue. Um, these symptoms can often overshadow the depression, especially in males. It can begin with anything like a breakup, being rejected by peers, or bullying. So counseling is really important. Um, Sometimes medication is necessary. I have definitely gotten teens on meds. Um, Sometimes they need it. We don't know what all has gone on, but sometimes their family history plus their environment, and and it's really frustrating for us because as therapists sometimes because there's only so much we can do. If they're going home to a situation for which we can't get help, mom or dad, or whomever they're living with, then it becomes really difficult. And all we can do is help them cope and help them work on their own self esteem and self worth and normalize things for them. But we can't change their environment. And so medicine sometimes will help stabilize them when there's nothing else we can do about what's going on. Divorced parents, kids who are unpopular, kids who are having issues with any kind of conflict, and then gay and lesbian youth are at high risk for depression. So being able to talk about sexual identity with adolescents and making sure you make it safe for them to talk to you about where they are with that, because that could be part of it. Are they having trouble deciding Are they questioning sexuality? Are they worried about what would happen if they came out with that? And you need to be a safe place for them to talk, and so you can help them navigate all of that to help ease their depression. Okay, suicide is very prevalent. It's the third leading cause of death for 10 to 19-year-olds. Screen, 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 screen. We have taught you so much about this. Screen every time. It doesn't matter. It's not a popularity contest. You ask them, are you considering suicide? Are you thinking about taking your life? Are you thinking about suicide? I'm going to say the word suicide. Right? We learned that we have to be open with it. Um, let's see. Girls are twice as likely to have depression as boys. 10% of high school females and more than 6% of males attempt, but males usually use a more lethal method, which ends in their death more often. There are co-occurring factors that increase the risk, which are depression, alcohol use, impulsivity, risk-taking, low self-esteem, irrational thinking, and loneliness are closely linked with suicide. You're going to be doing your suicide risk assessment and you're looking for risk factors. Then you're looking for protective factors to see how that offsets the risk. And then you determine what level of risk they are. Remember from foundations, and I'm sure you're learning about this in your crisis trauma grief class. I think you guys are taking that right now. I'm sure you're learning about this as well. So it's one of the most important things that we do. Suicide risk assessment, one of the most important things we do. All right, identity development. Moving into that. Theories of identity. Ooh, we're back to theories. We got old Erickson. I love Erickson. Theories of identity development. Adolescents are trying to find their identity. Where do they fit? Identity is really tied to that social interaction. We talked about gifted classes and, where are they in their peers and are they being accepted or rejected? So this identity versus role confusion. Role confusion is normal. It's normal for them to question and not know exactly what they want to do and who they are. But also, you stay stuck here. If you don't resolve it, they stay stuck in confusion. I have an older client, 22-year-old, who's really struggling with this. And I have working with him to figure out what his identity is because he wasn't able to resolve this task earlier. Then we have Marcia's model. So Marcia's model was developed by James Marcia. This is identity development. It's another theory other than Erickson's, and he has 4 types of identity status. That there's identity achievement, moratorium, identity diffusion, and foreclosure, and identity achievement. Say that twice. So, in starting at the lower end of the continuum is diffusion, identity diffusion. This is where adolescents are unsure of themselves, not actively explored many options relative to what they want to do with their lives. They can't make commitments, they're having trouble in relationships, they're struggling to make friends and complete schoolwork and make decisions. They can be very dependent on others and isolated and have a lot of anxiety and apathy. So see if they stay there, they're going to be a high risk for depression because those are the co-occurring issues and risk factors we talked about for depression. During the moratorium period, adolescents struggle with decisions, but it is a crisis period. They may appear to be self-confident on one hand but anxious on the other. This is where they're exploring relationships, career options, different identities. They have a vague idea of what they want to be but can't make a commitment and achieve identity. In foreclosure, adolescents have committed to certain choices. They haven't explored all the alternatives, but they may adopt parents' values and choose something others want for them. And this you will get. A lot of times kids come in and their parents want them to play sports in college and they're, you're going to be a doctor like your dad or you're going to be a doctor like your mom or instead of nurturing them to go on their own path. And so there's a lot of pressure and there's this dissonance, right, inside of them. So you helping them, right, to understand they get to do what they want to do, right, and they don't have to They don't have to choose a path based on what others think. We all know that if that's not where their heart is and their passion is and where they're supposed to go, it's going to end badly. So, okay, identity achievement is in foreclosure. Also, they can be very dependent and easily influenced. Identity achievement is a desired goal. It's when adolescents have explored all the options, thought about what they want to be in life. They may adopt some values of parents and reject others, so they're trying to become who they are. Self-control, high self-esteem, self-directedness are really high in this phase. Um, they're more mature, so and then they can fluctuate, right? You can go back and forth on this. All right. Let's do gender and ethnic differences in identity development. We've got Carol Gilligan that we remember from before. So Erickson's research has been criticized because it was male-oriented and emphasizes the development of a separate identity. In contrast, Carol Gilligan, she says that the female identity is achieved through establishing relationships as opposed to developing a separate identity. Researchers have questioned Gilligan's approach and seem to veer in the direction of suggesting that individual differences may be more significant than gender differences. In fact, Marcia's research on identity revealed very few gender differences with regard to identity development. So this is what this is saying, all right? Gender does play a role in self-esteem. Girls transitioning from childhood to adolescence experience a drop in their self-confidence, self-esteem, and sense of mastery. Race and ethnicity are intertwined with identity development. Perceived discrimination during the transition to adolescence can really interfere and cause depression, and we already know that. That's alive and well in our world, and it happens, and it definitely happens at the school. It happens with peers because we know we have implicit bias. We know that we do discriminate, even when we think we don't, we do. And a lot of school has been geared to back up discrimination. Perception of marginalized populations in school with punishment, with higher classes being promoted to high classes. So, a lot of issues. I don't know if any of you are watching Little Fires Everywhere on Netflix. Or no, it's actually on Hulu. That was a best-selling book, and it is really good, and it definitely it hits on a lot of this. It's so some of you may enjoy that to kind of further develop and watch that. It's also fun. It's a good show. A little heavy, but good. And back to Carol Gilligan and her research versus others. I think it's important to know that. I want you to know um, Carol Gilligan, and then I want you to know Gurian and Stevens. In '05, they came back later and looked at the brain and hormonal differences. And they say during puberty, males have more dopamine in their brain, and that increases impulsivity and aggressiveness. They have more difficulty because of that in concentrating. And then they say that adolescent males need really strong role models and mentors to help facilitate healthy development. As girls transition, their self-confidence and mastery decline, and they receive a decline in self-esteem, says Vernon and Clemente in '05. They enter puberty earlier than boys when they do not have adequate coping skills to help them deal with the physical changes that account for different decline in self-esteem. Girls do achieve better in school than boys and do not have as many behavioral problems, but they still experience a decrease in self-esteem. Although the gender gap is not nearly as prominent as it once was, inequities still exist. Adolescents need strong female role models and opportunities to make their own decisions. Parents tend to allow teenage sons to be independent and autonomous and more than their daughters, which has a negative impact. Young females have more problems with self-esteem than males. So I think as you coaching parents, right? And you are seeing an adolescent, and the adolescent allows you to talk to the parents, you can coach them and say, and psychoed is your friend, and say, look, this is what's going on, and you need to allow, um, Keisha to have more time to um, do things autonomously, give her more independence, right? So she can, um, and often girls will model. There's this great book. Oh gosh, I think it's Ophelia, Raising Ophelia. You guys have probably heard of this book. I'm gonna pause and look it up so I can tell you what it is. Of course, you don't know I'm pausing, but I'm pausing. Okay, we're back and it's a black screen. So I'm going to show you this. Here's the book I was talking about, Reviving Ophelia. I don't know why I was thinking it was Raising, but it's Reviving Ophelia, Saving the Selves of Adolescent Girls. This book was excellent. Mary Piper wrote a book, and it was groundbreaking about what's happening to adolescent girls. Why are they going to therapy? Why are they having depression, eating disorders, suicide attempts? Um, and she talked about the media saturated culture with the unrealistic ideals of beauty and dehumanizing sex, a culture rife with addictions and sexually transmitted diseases, girl poisoning culture. It's brave and fearless and honest. A call to arms, offering important tactics, empathy, and strength. So she's a psychologist. So I just thought if you've never read this book, Reviving Ophelia, you might like to read that book about this issue because that is a big issue. And so as a therapist, you need to know that. The transition to adulthood, very different depending on different cultures. Um, Adulthood is being financially independent, um, securing full-time employment, assuming adult roles such as marriage and parenthood. College, financial instability and delaying marriage may delay taking on full adult roles. But depending on when you do that, it's different depending on the person and depending on the culture, right? Sometimes you're postponing that for one reason or another, or also the brain. The brain's not done growing. So, but in other cultures, adulthood happens maybe earlier. We don't have a rite of passage, but we do have things like voting, graduating, drinking age. But there are ceremonies for rites of passage in other cultures, like in Latin American countries. 15-year-old girls celebrate their transition from girlhood to womanhood with the quinceañera, which is that you've seen it. I think they have a TV show, like a reality show about this on Bravo or on one of those channels. Involves a mass celebration and rituals for relatives and guests. So let's move into social development. We're in the social development now. We're going to talk about the family. I actually think I'm going to split this up because we've almost done the first half, and then we're going to getting into the social development, which is section 3, and that's about 13 more slides. So I think I'm just going to break this one up. So this is your first part, about 20 minutes, and then we'll go into social development in the second lecture because I also need to take a break, and I want to get this up just in case y'all want to start watching.